Today we're going to talk about using Active Directory to authenticate users into the application. To do that, we'll head over to the gear icon and the admin console. And we're going to jump right into Active Directory setup. From Active Directory setup, you'll see that we need to provide just a few pieces of information, and then there are a couple more optional pieces of information you can apply as well for search efficiency. First, you need your host that we're going to connect to and the port. So if you're going over a secure port, by default it's 636, and if you're in a dev environment where you might not have 636 set up, port 389 is also available to be used as a default for non-secure. After you have your host and your port set up, you're going to pick the base path of where the users are going to be dropped into. So that's kind of the parent root directory. And then you also have the ability, if you want to get more granular, for specific containers or groups that you've created for OWL specifically, and also to enhance the speed at which we're able to search groups. This optional group search path is just for that. So in this particular example, we have a groups directory and then an OWL groups underneath of that. So when I go to do my group search, we know that we're targeting just that specific piece when we want to do our mapping for privileges in the next step. Then you'll provide your bind user and your bind password. These pieces of information will be asked every time that you want to come in and configure this because they're not stored. They're used as a one-time thing to go set that communication link up and be able to pull groups into memory so you can then map them to a role inside of OWL. So we'll get into the role mapping once we save and enable our Active Directory server. After hitting save, you should see something show up like this that gives you a confirmation that everything was saved properly. Now at this point, we've established communication to the Active Directory server, but if a user went to log in, they wouldn't have any permissions. So we want to do the permission piece next, which is what OWL calls the role mapping in Active Directory. And what role mapping does is it says, okay, what role inside of OWL is going to link to a specific group inside of Active Directory. And by doing this, we don't have to manage individual Active Directory users. So if someone leaves the organization, we're not removing them from Active Directory and then coming into OWL to do some permission change there as well. It's going to be a one-to-one mapping with whatever Active Directory group that you have set up. So for example, if I wanted to grant administrative role to a set of users inside of Active Directory, I would pick my OWL role as a role admin, and then I would hit load groups. Once I load groups on the left-hand side, you're going to see everything, every group inside of my Active Directory pop up here. So that's just a direct query on Active Directory. And then on the right side is any groups that I've applied to role admin. So in this scenario, these groups, OWL admin, dataset admin, and app admin, all the people inside those groups in Active Directory will then get the role admin role. So when someone from Active Directory in one of these groups logs into the app, we will notice that this has been applied to role admin, and they will have all the rights that an admin should have, which is getting to the admin console, changing permissions, adding access to data sets, all things that we'll touch on in a future video set. All of these roles in this list, you'll see out of the box. So these have very specific and documented functions within the application itself. You also have the ability in OWL to create ad hoc dynamic roles. So if you do that, you could add a role on the fly, say for human resources or anything that you might want, where you want to map to a specific set of data sets in the system. So that's where you can, in just a couple of clicks, be able to create a role on the fly and apply that, and then save your information to the HR group. And then anybody that logs in, these users, anybody in the user group, will get the role of HR. And so then you can apply data sets to the HR role that we'll discuss in the next video of adding permissions. Thanks.